You know my fascination for history and the mysteries that surround history. And going out seeking these histories, trying to uncover truths, separating fact from fiction. Well, there are people that go and they go far beyond where others go, and they dig into things that will blow your mind. Imagine going on a hunt for lost Civil War gold, and opening up your mind to a whole new world, the world of the supernatural, the paranormal, where things come to life one more time. You hear the footsteps and see the visages of wartime soldiers as they continue on their silent march. You hear of witchcraft and UFOs, all in one area, a part of history that seems to be lost, yet still playing out for those that wish to see it. Our guest tonight in the first segment is Shane Cashman. His book is called Tales from the Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War. We have a link for that book in tonight's program guide, so make sure you check it out and check out his website for more information. A little bit later on in the program, medium psychic Amy Hoyt joins us to talk about unsettled spirits and some of the most terrifying experiences she's ever dealt with. We'll do that and more here on the very best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader, your host, and this is the Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
You won't know. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Oh, we are back. It's a brand new week. I am re-energized and ready to re-enter the world after having spent an amazing weekend in Richmond, Virginia, surrounded by fans of the strange, the supernatural, sci-fi, comic book, full nerdum in effect. I got to tell you, GalaxyCon was amazing. And how many unbelievable people came to my table to tell me the ghost stories of Richmond, begging me to go with them to these sites, to see things, to experience their history. And I'll be going back. I'll be going back to Richmond in October. Information about that will be coming soon. There will be a new horror convention in Richmond, Virginia, and I will be there. I hope to see you there as well. It is going to be remarkable. But while I'm there, I'm going to be seeing the sites, and I'd like to see them with you. So as I get closer to this, I will be talking to you about it and letting you know how you can join me at some of the most haunted sites in and around Richmond as we uncover more of history's mysteries together. But while I was there, so many people came to tell me about the rich Civil War histories and how many ghosts there are. And man, I've got to come on your show and talk about it. And I said, we'll definitely arrange it. But tonight, I already have a guest that was planned weeks in advance to come with us tonight to talk about his brand new book. The book is out and available. Tales from the Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War. Shane Cashman is our guest. The search for Confederate gold in a town haunted by war, grief, ghosts, UFOs, and desperation. Please help me welcome to the Paranormal 60, Shane Cashman. Hello, Shane.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you. Wow, I need to know, going into this, obviously looking for lost Confederate gold, this is like Raiders of the Lost Ark come to life, right? An opportunity to find real American history and treasure. But people have been running after lost Civil War gold for as long as the Civil War has been over. Why did you feel that this would be a place that would be fruitful for you? Why this location in Georgia to go to?
So a young man by the name of Clint Brantley had reached out to me and my boss after he had saw me on another show. And he said that there was this legend of the lost Confederate gold in his town. And I grew up in West Point, New York. I consider myself a Civil War nerd. I didn't know about Washington all that much. I didn't know that this is where Jefferson Davis dissolved the Confederacy after they left Richmond. I didn't know about the Confederate gold being supposedly lost here. It's a very small town, about 2.5 hours east of Atlanta. So it was intriguing to me because as much as I thought I knew about the Civil War, I didn't know anything about Washington and all the the events surrounding this little town where the Confederacy died. So it sounded
And
interesting. And yeah,
when
sorry.
he's referring to Washington, it's Washington, Georgia, is
Right.
the community that he was brought to. If this guy believed that it was there, why wasn't he digging it up? I mean, that's got
Yeah.
to be a lot of money in lost treasure. Should that have been a red flag to most treasure hunters? And if somebody's talking about it, it probably doesn't exist there.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is everybody in this town has looked for the gold. I mean, within 5 minutes of me being in the town square for the first time, I'm watching old men with their metal detectors. Everyone's scouring the land. The town's economy is kind of propped up by the gold tourism. People come from out of town to find the gold. People who've been there their whole lives are looking for the gold. There are pieces and stories of people finding stuff, but as to like the entire treasure, it's become a legend that people, to this day, they will spend inordinate amount of monies on to try to find it.
Well, Shane, just before we get into the paranormal aspect of it, as a treasure
Yeah.
hunter, I'm curious, when you go to look at something like this, you're going to a town where obviously there is county and city owned properties and then private properties. Should you, Shane Cashman, stumble upon this cachet of treasure, is it something you have to secret out in your backpack and hope nobody finds out, or do you get to split it with the town? With the how exactly does that work?
Yeah, that's funny. I had this conversation with some of the local historians who are from Washington. They were telling me that the federal government owns it no matter what. So if you find it, you got to secret it out of town in your backpack, in the trunk of your rental car, as best you could. But on my first trip down there, which was in October of 2022, it was around the same time that the story was breaking about the finders keepers treasure hunters in Pennsylvania, and they had found where they believed was other Confederate gold, and the FBI swooped in, took it, and now they're in a legal battle about the gold. I think to this day, I'm not sure where they're at now.
Wow.
So that was happening as I was going down there for the first time. So yeah, I think in my mind, the federal government will find a way to swoop in and take it. But there are people who have stories in that town where they found pieces and they keep it a secret, But that who do you believe? Because they don't want to show you either, because they're afraid
Right.
to show you. So it's one of those things where you just never really know who to believe.
Now, for people that don't know, the Confederate gold, a lot of this gold, if I remember my history books correctly, was gold that when the Civil War was taking place, there were mints in different towns throughout the South, Dahlonega, Georgia being one of them, where the
Exactly.
Confederacy just took it over. This is us. This is our stuff, our gold. And it became there. And they stamped their own coinage. They created their own currency, their own bricks with special stamps on them, things along that way. Now, is that what we're seeking, or is it just the cachet of original American gold that they've stored and hidden away?
It was a mixture of everything. So it was a Confederate stuff, just gold. It was Mexican gold
Right.
and money because the Mexicans donated to the Confederacy. And then it was a bunch of jewels and treasures that were donated to the Confederacy by wealthy people from the South. But thinking of Richmond, which you brought up in the beginning of the show,
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember just how gnarly it got in Richmond at the end of the war, right before the Confederacy fully fell. The Confederates burnt down that whole city, and
Wow.
because they didn't want the Union to take it over. So the gold
Mhm.
and the treasury was there with Jefferson Davis and his cabinet, and then 2 trains left the city at night as it was burning. They burned all the tobacco factories. They burned all the bars. They poured all the liquor into the gutters. And I was reading these crazy stories by Captain William Harwart Parker, who was the guy in charge of the gold, getting it from Richmond, Virginia to Washington, Georgia. And he was saying that he saw these, he called them drunken demons, scooping up the liquor from the gutters and drinking out of their hats just to get drunk as the war was coming to an end. So I didn't really get into the paranormal stories in Richmond, but just that whole scenario, to me, it gives birth to like this demon ghost world that Richmond then becomes. And then the Hollywood cemetery is also there where Davis is buried later on.
Well, I was there partying over the weekend, and it's not that far removed. People are still drinking booze out of the gutters if it's free. I'm
Oh,
joking.
I'll have to
Let
go.
me yeah, right. Let me ask you then. So going into this, you're going for the history and for mining this hidden treasure trove that might still exist. Did you have a belief system when it came to the supernatural prior to this?
Yes and no. I'm
Okay.
skeptical on one hand, but I've also had encounters I can't explain. So I don't outright dismiss everything or anyone's stories. Even when someone comes to me with an absurd story, I don't discount it right away. But on the other hand, the things I've experienced, I just I don't know what to call them. So I went down there with a pretty open mind. And again, like I said with the gold and seeing the old men with the metal detectors, within my first hour of being in that town, I was already seeing a woman who had run out of a building because the ghosts were too loud inside. And she would later become this kind of a recurring character in the book, who she believes is possessed by a ghost of the second woman ever hanged in Georgia for helping to murder her husband. And
Wow.
that whole story is like kind of like this side plot that develops throughout the book. So the thing with her is, okay, I just met her. She could just be a crazy person, but she's telling me these very specific details, which I would later I would get to confirm certain details here and there. But the weirder part for
Hmm.
me was 2 days before I met her, I met another woman in New York who had the same exact type of situation with ghosts, where she would walk into a place and they'd be too loud. And I never met anyone like that. So it's just, maybe it was a weird coincidence, but I was oddly primed for that experience in Georgia 2 days prior with someone else who had the very similar experiences with what they called ghosts or spirits. Uh, and that just continued to happen every time I went into this town and met someone, because, although it's a very religious area and a lot of people in that area are kind of reluctant to talk about ghosts or UFOs or stuff like that,
Right.
everyone there has some type of story. They'd be like, whether it was a 20-year-old or a 90-year-old person, they, I believe in God. I don't like talking about the spirit, the supernatural, but I did see this ghost, or I did hear this weird ghostly piano, or I saw a demon, all UFOs. So, it was in abundance in this town where I couldn't talk to anybody without getting a story like that. And it was great.
That's remarkable. Having just spent, almost half a year in Butte, Montana,
Mm.
surrounded in the history, the blood, the greed, the deception, all that took place there. And I completely understand what it must have been like for you to go into a place where every place you go, there's a story, there's
Yeah.
something. Now the UFO, that's something different. That's a little out there and probably not expected at all. Of course, you got to guess. All right, this is blood-soaked land. There was a lot of treachery. There was a lot of
Yes.
villainy going on and a lot of war. So there's going to be this psychic scar on the land
Hmm.
that's taking place. We'll get into the UFOs, but I mean, you also tapped into witchcraft stories and ghosts and creatures and aliens. Do you think that some of these stories, as you're going along, are ways to just try to keep interlopers out of town, as a kind of Scooby Doo idea that if we've got the guy dressing up like the old ghost pirate, it'll keep the people from going in and finding the
Yes.
real treasure until they do?
Yes. Oh yeah, constantly. I mean, my skepticism is borderline unhealthy, where I'm like, I'm meeting people. I'm like, are they just trying to pull my leg here because they know about this type of tourism that's happened in this little town? Because it's a town that is not doing the best.
Hmm.
It's gone through a string of horrors from the American Revolution to today. So yeah, I think about that constantly. But at a certain point, there's just, every time I turn around, there's people coming out of the woodwork with these stories, where I'm like, at a point, I have to think, okay, is this entire town a conspiracy against me now? Because they've banded together to convince me about it,
Hmm.
which, hey, it's possible. But, at a certain point, there were just people who I would go into deep into the forest and on their farm, and they're like 80-year-old people, nice people, and they could tell you they're reluctant to even talk to me about it, not just because of my Yankee accent, which they would call out immediately, but because of, me just being a writer. And, they don't really want to tell someone their story knowing it's going to be shared with others. So I started to think like what you were just saying about the psychic scar on a land, right? Where it's,
Right.
I think the land is breeding this type of situation. Whether or not you want to believe in the supernatural stuff, something has happened in the minds of these people throughout time. Because a lot of these people I talk to, they can trace a direct line straight back pre-American Revolution. Because one of the bloodiest battles of the Revolution was the Battle of Kettle Creek, which happened in this town in Georgia, when the Patriots down there beat the British, and it was a horrible battle. And it was one of those things where they said the land was soaked in blood, and a lot of the people who were fighting the British were these illiterate horse thieves type people. And I was talking to their descendants and looking at their diaries. They couldn't even sign their names. It was just an X. So that's just a fraction of what would become
Shane,
horror after horror.
How do illiterate horse thieves have diaries to begin with then, if it's just a bunch of X's?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's good. I think they would just talk to people who would write, and then it was like in their church. I look at church documents. So I guess it was people from their churches telling these stories. And again, I'm looking at these things like they could be forgeries as well. I kept thinking about how George Washington, when he was the president, he spent his last day in office supposedly talking about all the fake news written about him. So who knows? At the end of the day.
Wait, presidents talking about fake news?
I know. Even George Washington was doing it back then.
Right.
But no, it's something I think about quite often. But it was so funny because the guy in charge of the land at Kettle Creek was the descendant of the man who fought in Kettle Creek, who was the illiterate horse thief. So he had like an abundance of family literature from dating back then, where I want to believe this. And it's funny because these guys take their history so seriously. This gentleman in particular, and another gentleman, sorry, this is a side story, but I think it's hilarious of how serious they take their history. Almost got into a fist fight, these two Revolutionary War historians, over whether or not people were on horseback or not for one part of the battle. So and it goes back to the different diaries or whatever they're reading from back then on who said what, and they are constantly in conflict. And that thing is happening in this town, and on a broader scale throughout every part of history, where I'm in this town, and then it's like the gold story. People are fighting over where the gold was, where was it left at this point, or was it this point? They're fighting over the Civil War and all these different things. So at a certain point, everyone's canceling each other out, where I'm kind of left with my skepticism in the end. I go into the skepticism, I start to want to open up and believe a lot of different stories, but at the end, it's like it's hard to nail down anything, because I'm talking to one lady who runs the historic museum in this town, and she spent decades poring over all these documents to find the gold. And on my last day with her, she's just then finding a new location to go dig. So it's like, it's a continual thing that I could spend 10 more years there trying to uncover this stuff.
Well, let's dig into the paranormal, the creepy, weird stuff, because obviously that's what our audience is here for. The idea of chasing after gold and mysteries is awesome, but you immediately are kind of presented with these stories. Do you have any experiences while you're there yourself?
Well, I would say the first one was the UFO thing. If we want to get into the crazy stuff,
hit me between the eyes. Sure.
Well, the first one was meeting that woman who ran out, saying the ghosts were too loud, but I wasn't there inside, that was just her story. But then the 2 nights later, on my third night there, third night, my first trip, I'm standing outside of Clint Brantley's house, his parents' house. His father had just gone to shoot a possum at the fire station. It was a rabid possum with his AR-15. He comes back outside. We meet his father in the dark. And right above the sky, above the house, right above the pine trees, is this bright orb going up and down and left and right consistently. And again, I don't first see it and think, wow, it's a UFO. I'm just like, okay, it's probably a satellite. But then his father and Clint's brother are saying, oh, that's the UFO. We've seen that our whole life. And then, his father's telling me how he saw it when he was a kid. I'm like, okay, so they're telling me these stories. Again, it's nothing, but it doesn't disappear. And very bright, and it's moving. I don't want to say closer, but it's like descending lower, then going higher, and then another one appears to the. I guess that was the east. It's doing the same thing. So I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what this is. I at the time I'm like, I'm calling it UFO because it's unidentified, but I can't really say it's extraterrestrial. But
Right.
I would spend a good amount of time looking into what that was, whether it was a meteorologist from the area, whether it was a DEA. I was trying to see if it was
Mhm.
helicopters, uh, different. There's an astronomer village in this area called Deer Lick Astronomy Village. They all know and have seen these UFOs, but none of them can tell me what it was. So it wasn't a DEA helicopter. The meteorologist was thinking it was like a weather balloon, but it didn't add up to the times that they would be released in Atlanta. No one knew. So everyone in town has encountered this thing as I had seen it, but they couldn't explain it. So there was that. And then in asking questions about the UFO around town, I then found people who said they would had stories dating back to the 50s and 60s of watching UFOs land in their backyards. And this is when I started talking to these like devout Christians who really didn't want to talk about aliens, but they were like, we swear to you, we watched this saucer land in our backyard, which then went into the investigation of someone told me they had a Polaroid of a UFO. Someone I knew broke into an abandoned house to find the Polaroid. The Polaroid was not found. I was hoping it would have been, but this Polaroid, I want to believe it was true. I can't verify it, but the sheriff of the town was best friends with the person who took the Polaroid. The sheriff said he saw the Polaroid of the UFO, and he told us where to look. I talked to the owners of this certain pawn shop where the person worked who took the Polaroid. They had all seen this Polaroid. A few people had said they didn't, but so that was the first real experience, and then it turned into this haunted doll that people were experiencing. I took a tour of a bunch of ghost houses in the area with a man who spoke to the dead, and he spoke to ghosts who inhabited this house. And again, I want to be a nice host to him because
Right.
I'm skeptical because at one hand I'm telling him he might just be whispering voices into his recorder, and it's just him trying to mess with me, like you were saying earlier. But he told me a story about a haunted doll, and this man's not even from this town. I got to say this. He told me about a haunted doll. We looked at the haunted doll. He told me why he believes it's haunted. It's a creepy doll. It's an old China doll from the 18th century that a traveling salesman would take from town to town to show miniature versions of the dresses he was selling. So he tells me it's haunted, and then I come back months later, and I'm staying in a hotel that is run by these women, and I'm talking to one of them, and I ask her about weird encounters, and then she tells me about a haunted doll in the same house that this guy was telling me, how when she was on the field trip, the doll jumped off the chair and scared all the kids. And I was like, okay, that is bizarre. She had never heard of this man or that story.
Right.
Then I talked to another woman who was there that day, who was the older woman who's a historian I was telling you about. She was there on the tour, and she said she saw the doll like leave the chair, leapt off the chair. So I don't know what that is. I wasn't there, but these different people who don't know each other had the similar story about the same thing. So yeah, all those things started turning up, and then with the witches.
Now, would you
it just got
notice,
weirder.
Shane? Would
Yeah.
you notice that as you're pushing certain aspects of your research into the history that or as you're researching these stories, was it around specific times of year, around specific things that were going on in and around the town at that time? Was there, issues with the community or strife in the community that might have, these outbursts of weird activity might be taking place at those moments?
I didn't really not in terms of times of year, but maybe if I go back and look at some of my notes, you could link it up to certain traumatic events, whether it was
That's what
a
I was
fire,
thinking.
whether it was a
Right.
bad fire, or whether it was the war, the boll weevil, because I found a great old book in the library of this town. I believe her name, the journalist, was Elizabeth Bowen, and she was a journalist from this town I want to say the turn of the 19th century, and she did a lot of really great reporting. and she wrote this one great story, an article about a woman who had been sick, and she was from the town of Washington. She went an hour north to get treated by a doctor with her husband, and she dreamt that night that the town of Washington burnt down, and she told her husband from what building to what building. And the next day, her husband was outside of the doctor's office. A guy came up on a horse, and the colonel asked, what news do you bring? And he said, Washington burned down. And so the colonel got on the train, went south, and according to him and according to Elizabeth Bowen, the dream that his wife had it started at the house she dreamed of, and it went through the town square. So, if you could look at something like that, where it's like a horrible fire, and then it caused some type of, psychic experience for this woman who was sick, and there was a lot of weird things happening in terms of.
So that must have made her. Yeah, that must have made her unicorn head just explode to have these kind of have
Right.
these ideas and these dreams, but then to realize that there's truth behind what's going on, and that it's
I know.
not just.
I would have loved for Elizabeth Bowen to follow up with her, back
Right.
then, to see if she was having any more experiences at all,
Right.
or how she was dealing with it. Because, the fire happened. I was able to look at all the documents. I wish I could get more from the lady and the husband from back then. But Elizabeth, her reporting was so accurate everywhere else. She wasn't one, at least for me, to exaggerate things or write about weird stuff. I mean, she wrote about, dark things, crime, people thinking they saw a ghost or something, but it was always from a really objective point of view. So, I took her writing really seriously, and she wrote extensively. And she was also, I think, a mathematician and an astronomer. So she was a fascinating woman. And yeah, so there's something like that.
So she's coming from this base of science and journalistic integrity.
Yeah.
And she's just reporting the story as it comes in. She's not really weighing on it one side or the other, just like, hey, for what it's worth, this is really happening. These things are taking place. I'm just documenting them. I can't. Wow, but you said then there's witchcraft involved. How does that tie into this area?
Oh man. So I didn't expect the witches. That was a surprise. It was probably right after my first trip there where Clint was reached out. A witch had reached out to him. I guess they'd heard about us going around town asking about all the gold stuff, and then the paranormal stuff as well. Because I'd written the first Inverted World book by that point, or at least the book was almost out, but the series was online, and so they knew I was into this weird stuff. So they said, "Do you want to come watch us charge our crystals on a full moon at the Battle of Kettle Creek, the Revolutionary battle I was telling you about?" So I wasn't there for that. But I got to talk to the witches who were there, and to Clint, who charged their crystals on the Battle of Kettle Creek. Now, the one witch, told me she does it because she believes good people died there, and that energy helps charge her crystals. Whereas other people would say that's blood magic and it's a bad thing. And that Clint was in this is according to other witches, Clint put himself in a bad place by being there because they're actually sacrificing a part of his soul. Now, that was just the first instance. And I was interested in that. I was interested in why there seemed to be a whole bunch of witches in this area. And I think it was by this time, this time last year in March, I was there in March. I kept meeting witches. I was at a bar. I'd be talking about witches. I'd turn around. This guy is a witch. He's like, "Oh, I heard you talking about witches. Let's talk." And it's just this thing that's happening there. And that's when I was also staying at a hotel, where I was at this hotel in the middle of town to look for a graveyard that the hotel was buried on top of. I heard that the woman who killed her husband, the second woman ever hanged in Georgia, was buried in this graveyard, and that there was a trap door into the floor to find her grave. When I come downstairs to talk to the concierge, I don't know. I have to look at the book. It's been a while since I wrote this part, but within 2 sentences of me talking to this woman, asking about the grave, she tells me she's a witch. And it turns out all the women running this hotel are witches. There's Catholic witches, they're telling me, there are Christian witches, and it's a whole thing I'd never even heard of in terms of that. But
so I've got to ask you,
I don't know what it is.
Obviously, this is an old Southern town steeped in the supernatural, steeped in superstition. But now you're starting to hear witches, and obviously we know they're not bent noses, pointy hats, and
Mhm.
casting spells, right?
Mhm.
But it's a culture, it's a religion, it's a belief system.
Mhm.
But you've got tortured souls on this land from war. You've got tortured souls on this land that were killed out of greed and lust, and you've got violence. You've got strange lights in the sky that are dating back hundreds of years. People are still seeing these things. You've seen them yourself. Again, it goes beyond just the folklore of stay out of our community, don't come looking for the gold because the old witch will get you kind of story. But there's corroboration that these type of scenarios and these spirits do still roam this earth, and they are frightening people. They are making people aware of their presence. So history continues to speak.
Oh yeah, and it was so interesting to dig through the history of I spent so much time reading diaries from people in the Confederacy who were like the Captain William Harwar Parker, who was the guy in charge of the gold at first. And when I would read their like a digitized version of their diary, which was so beautifully written, I would be able to search the document for anything concerning ghosts or mediums, which were popular back then, because you think about how America was during the Civil War for all the bloodshed, and then mediums became popular, and then obviously in the immediate aftermath of the war, then the president is assassinated, and the first lady was also into mediums and kind of into seance. Well, not kind of, she was into seances. I believe she had seances in the Red Room, right?
In the White House, right?
In the White House. So it wasn't. I'm in Washington, Georgia, experiencing this atmosphere that's the paranormal stuff is palpable. And it's everywhere, but it's honestly no different than how it was during the Civil War. So when I'm reading something like Captain Parker's diary, he's got stories of ghosts. He's got stories of mediums, and they're so similar to what people are talking about today. And that's again what led me to that whole idea of you put it as like the psychic scar on the land. I call it this traumatized land, where I don't know if some people could look at that and say, okay, well, the trauma breeds the paranormal, and that's where it slips through the trauma and it stays here, like like some type of hellmouth. I think of watching Buffy when I was a kid, and like this land, but I love that idea of like it comes spilling out of the ground basically, because this land experienced that, or the trauma makes people susceptible to things that they think are paranormal. And that's, so I'm constantly like walking that line of like, what are these people talking about? What are they experiencing? I'm trying to give them like the patience and grace to explain their stories, and I take them very seriously. But after a while, after so many stories, where nearly like everyone I talked to had a story, it just felt like something is definitely in the land there constantly from pre-America, and will always be there.
Do you think that there is a curse on this land? Not necessarily in the way we would think, like witches cursing the land or Native Americans, cursing that area. But do you think that there is this kind of curse of just the amount of loss that took place there? Do you think this gold will ever be found? Will the supernatural element ever allow it to really be found?
Yes, the land is scarred. I believe it will always be scarred. I believe almost everywhere has this type of scar. For humans are barbaric. We do barbaric things. Violence always puts a scar on the land. But this town in particular, and Georgia in general, because you just think of like Sherman's March to the Sea, the destruction that caused, everything after that. I mean, slavery, the war, and then you go back before that to what I was saying with the Revolutionary War happening there, and then the battle between the Creek and the Cherokee back then, and then the people who came and colonized the land. Okay, then fast forward past the Civil War, past the March of the Sea. Then you're looking at the boll weevil. Then you're looking at the fires. Then you're looking at the depression. It doesn't stop. And then you're looking at the past few years. So it's just constant trauma. And yeah, I don't think it'll ever heal itself, although it tries. There's an insane amount of churches in this town. And there's almost a church for like every person, it seems like. It doesn't even make sense, because it's an abandoned area, it feels like, in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I don't know if the supernatural will allow the
makes
place.
you wonder. So many places are built to keep evil out, and this makes you almost wonder if these churches and the way things are structured are there to keep something in, to
Yeah,
keep it
no.
from getting free.
Yeah, there's, I go down a path of looking at those churches because it was one of the first things that was told to me before I went down there about the amount of churches and just how bizarre the churches were in the numbers of churches, when they were built, the prices they were built for, around what time. So I was looking into all of that because it was fascinating to me that a place that could experience so much devastation could still have money to build all these churches.
Right.
So, and then back to your other question about, will anyone ever find the gold? Like I said, there's people who told me they found gold, and people who I would like to say I could trust. They would say they found gold in old chimneys in the woods, just like
Sure.
the chimney just standing there in the middle of the woods, or people finding pieces underneath cedar fence posts, because they would say back in the day they would hide them under the cedar fence post because the cedar wouldn't rot. And it would be a perfect place to hide these things. And I saw some pieces, but
Sure.
I don't think it'll ever be.
I can tell you, Shane, I worked in collectible gold and silver market for 12 years of my life. And we found these caches of gold coins, and they would often be hidden up in the chimney behind a brick. They would be hidden up behind the mantle. They would be hidden under fence posts so that you knew where they were and you could tell family members easily enough. If you go out by the old cedar, take a left, the fourth post from the left is where you're going to find these. So that all tracks to how many of these amazing finds have come. And they used to stuff in the walls because there was no insulation. They would put old newspapers and books.
Yes.
And a lot of times they would hide their money and things in the walls. And it's not until these places are being demolished. And sometimes you've got to wonder how much of that has been pushed away or turned into rubbish that nobody ever knew about because dump trucks just picked up garbage and took it after they demolished some of these sites.
Exactly. I think about that so much in the book because, after the boll weevil destroyed the cotton plants, like decimated that whole industry, they eventually turned to pine trees. And so all the land where this gold supposedly was has just been pine trees, pine nurseries. So every 7 years, that land is flipped like a pancake. The trees are planted, they grow, they're cut down. So it's like constantly being dug open. So it's, that land is not even the land anymore. It just keeps being turned upside down. And you would think they would find stuff, and maybe they have. Those would be the people I tried talking to, but they're very secretive out there with the pine trees.
Maybe for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Shane, the book is out. It's available. It's called Tales from the Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War. Shane Cashman, our guest, the author of this book. We have a link for it on today's program guide, a link on your website. You do so much other work and research. Shane, if you find the gold, you better come back and talk to me about it. And if you've got more books and other projects in the works that dabble into the strange and the supernatural, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. If I find the gold, I'll tell you in secret.
Yes, of course. All right. So, folks, if suddenly your buddy Dave just doesn't show up anymore, I've got my 10% and I'm moving on. Thank you very much, Shane. You have a great rest of your night. And
thank you. Same to you.
That book is out there and available for everyone to see, to find, and be a part of, especially because, again, that's what I love about the supernatural. It is history demanding to be heard. But I think in a lot of these cases, it's also history demanding to leave certain things at rest. And maybe this gold, which stood for something so different in that time, maybe it needs to stay buried because it was the destruction of civility, brothers and sisters fighting and fathers and sons, and it was a different time and a different era, and it was blood money. And if it's unearthed, what type of curse is there steeped on these gold pieces and the gems and the jewels that are being, protected over by One-Eyed Willie in the Goondocks somewhere? It's fun to fascinate and fun to fantasize and think about. That's why these books are great. And do me a favor, folks, don't just get the book. Make sure that when you get a book like this from our guests, our authors, rate and review them, especially on Amazon.com or wherever you get the books, because that goes a long way to help the authors to get higher views online, Amazon reviews, all of that goes a long way to help out, just like in helping our show. When you go review it on all of the different podcast platforms or even here on YouTube, it goes a long way. Takes you half a second to do, and it goes a long way to help the people that you love and support. Speaking of love and support, make sure you love and support all of the great sponsors that are part of the Paranormal 60. Hey, I want to mention we got something exciting coming up here. We're not too far away. June 15th through the 17th, the Spirits of Summer at the Palmer House Hotel. Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files and 28 Days Haunted. Me, Dave Schrader from the Holzer Files and Ghost of Devil's Perch. And Bill Chappell from Ghost Adventures will all be on site, along with a special guest who will be helping you open up to the psychic realm. Bill Chappell there with tools and equipment to help us bridge that chasm and speak to the dead. Shane Pittman and myself as your hosts and journeymen into the supernatural. We hope that you'll check that out and come on out, be a part of that with us. It's always a lot of fun to get out there and see these locations. Later on this year, well, I guess sooner than that, in May 5th and 6th, it's the Cinco de Mayo event back behind bars at Old Joliet State Prison. Our special guest, Kitsy Duncan, will be on hand as well. A psychic sensitive medium. She'll be there helping us do the investigation at Old Joliet State Prison, and we'd love for you to join us. There are only a handful of tickets that still remain for this event. You can come Friday the 5th or Saturday the 6th. You get daytime access to the prison, historical walks, and nighttime ghost hunts, meet and greet with Shane and I, opportunities to take pictures, Q&As, and more. All the information for these events can be found very easily by just visiting darknessevents.com. That's darknessevents.com.
Join us for this amazing paranormal conference that's being held in a haunted school in Glen Beulah, Wisconsin. Haunted Midwest Ghost Tours presents Great Lakes Paranormal Conference on September 22nd through the 24th, 2023. We have some great speakers with Jason Hawes, Adam Berry, Sherry D. Benedetti, Lyle Blackburn, Shane Pittman, Sarah Lemos, Dave Schrader, Jeff Bellinger, along with Wisconsin's very own Chad Lewis, and many more will make this one of Wisconsin's most talked about events. We have over 40 vendors and nighttime investigations at various haunted locations with special guests. Get your tickets now at GreatLakesParanormalConference.com and find us on Facebook under the same name. Choose from VIP, General 3-Day, and Day Pass. Again, that's GreatLakesParanormalConference.com.
Haunted Magazine is a publication dedicated to all things paranormal and spooky. Each issue features articles, interviews, and stories about ghosts, hauntings, and other unexplained phenomena. The magazine also covers topics such as cryptozoology, UFOs, and other aspects of the supernatural. Expect to find in-depth investigations of haunted locations, first-hand accounts of ghostly encounters, and reports of paranormal events and attractions. The magazine also includes features on the latest ghost hunting technology and techniques, as well as tips for those looking to search the supernatural on their own. Issue 37, The Frights of Spring, will be in stores from March 6th. So remember, don't be normal. Be paranormal, and order your copy today.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I want to thank everybody. I've been placing a lot of prayer and healing requests on my social media pages lately. And whether you are religious in nature or not, or a healer, an energy worker, Reiki practitioner, whatever you may consider yourself, I appreciate all of you that weigh in and do what you can to make a difference, because it does help, even in just the verbal and written support that you show on those pages has helped out people tremendously over the 18 years that I've been doing this. My aunt is currently facing a health issue, and she is truly an angel here on earth. And I know a lot of people throw that around easily, but she's a remarkable woman. So if you could keep Judy Polanowski my aunt in your prayers and thoughts. It would mean a lot to me, because she is going through quite a bit. She is a diabetic. She has lost a leg and has a prosthetic, which ended up creating an infection, which, as you know, can be quite deadly for diabetics. So please keep her in your thoughts and prayers, and keep checking my Facebook page for more prayer and healing requests. We've been posting a lot more than usual because there are a lot of people in dire need. I do my best to try to post them and get them out there as they cycle through the days when I can. So I just want to put that out there, and I want to thank everybody that has taken time to do that. I just got back, as I said, from doing an amazing the GalaxyCon out in Richmond, Virginia. I'm going to be I'm at all 4 GalaxyCons this year: Austin, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Ohio, and in Raleigh, North Carolina, I believe in July. So always out there having a great time, meeting some fascinating people. And I had a great opportunity to go to the Fear Fair. And while I was there, had a chance to meet our next guest, an electric woman that just exudes a really amazing energy and positivity about her. And we had a chance to talk about some elements of the paranormal. And she shared with me some of her experiences. And I asked her, would you be willing to come on the show and share these with me and share it with our audience to hear your story? And she agreed to do so. We do have a link for her and her website on today's program guide. She is a medium, a reader, so you can always reach out to her, book readings, keep in touch with her that way. But tonight we're going to talk about spirits, unsettled spirits and ghosts, and some of the most traumatic and frightening moments that our guest has had for herself. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal 60, Amy Christine. Thanks for being here, Amy.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I appreciate you coming on and being here with us. We're going to go a little late tonight, folks, so that we can make sure that Amy gets a full half an hour with us, because she's got a lot to share and a lot of great insights.
Oh, yeah.
Man, the energy you shared at the Fear Festival was amazing. Just watching you as you told these stories, and I could see it in your eyes, the things and the positivity that you've worked in other people's lives to help them, and the things that have affected you. Obviously, having sensitivity is a double-edged sword, right? You've got this amazing gift, but it also it does kind of work as a curse in some elements, doesn't it? By being able to see all these things and experience all of this.
Yeah, it's a wild world, it's the duality of the earth, right? The duality of the veil is that we have to have the dark and the light. And unfortunately, the darkness comes for a lot of mediums, especially children, as they're growing up. So it is difficult at times. Yeah.
Were you gifted from a very early age, or was this something you made a conscious decision you wanted to develop and
Yeah.
came into later on in life?
I noticed about 3 or 4 years old, I was sensing and seeing spirits, and the spirits were lovely. I didn't have any issues with them whatsoever. It was what was kind of corralling the spirits and keeping them in that place that I had an issue with. Just the
All right.
darker side of life.
So let's talk about that, because that's an element that we've crossed through the years. And even in my work on the Ghost of Devil's Perch in Butte, Montana, the concept that there might be kind of an overlord spirit or energy that can control and manipulate other ghosts. That sounds like Hollywood stuff, but that's real. And that's
Yeah.
terrifying to me. You would like to think that your loved one passed on and that they're able to pass through the veil and go to their holy rewards,
Right.
go through their judgment, their healing phase, but it doesn't happen like that all the time. How are these beings so powerful that they can control the destiny and free will of other spiritual beings?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we've got the lower dimensional beings and the higher dimensional beings, which are lovely. But when someone passes with a lot of earthly matters or earthly connections, they tend to want to stick around. Whether I'm talking to somebody in spirit who was an alcoholic, they're afraid to cross over. They're afraid to be judged. They're afraid that they won't be able to drink more. They're just afraid of losing their identity. And so what happens is, this is in the spiritual medium world, is we call a stone spirit. somebody that's just kind of reliving things, or even people that have a lot of drama and trauma aren't ready to ascend into that higher state of consciousness. So I always coach people to just let it go. Just let it go, and don't be afraid to cross over. Um, a lot of people have seen these energies, and I've been clearing houses out for years. I've been helping people with, demonic energies and also earthbound spirits. It's very rare I run into a demonic energy, but unfortunately, I did grow up in a house with that. And that was hard.
Man, this is such a sip from a fire hose. So much information we can go into, but I do have to ask you, right? You bring up some really interesting elements of this, and
Mhm.
right, so you've got these different energies, the reasons why spirits would stay behind. I'm always fascinated because there is this turn away from religion
Mhm.
on the whole, right? People are looking for other ways to be spiritual, but they don't necessarily believe in God. They
Right.
don't believe in an afterlife per se. Do you think because we're kind of at an apex of people turning away from organized belief systems, trying to
Mhm.
find their own ways, are we going to run into more ghosts in the future here, Amy? Because people are going to cross over and then they're going to be like, oh crap, there is something. I'm not going through that light. I messed
Right.
up an awful lot thinking I wasn't going to have to face this. I'm not trying to be silly about it, but
Mm.
I could tell you from my own personal views, I've come to terms with my belief systems. I
Mhm.
believe there will be retribution that will have to be paid, and I believe there'll be glory that will be given to people for the good things that they
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of my atheistic friends, or not even atheistic, because that sounds like they're defiantly against anything. They just don't have any belief in anything after life.
Right.
And I got to guess that's going to be, you know, a shock. That's why Elvis Presley wore many different medallions around his neck of religious purpose. And people said, you've got a Star of David, you've got a Christian cross, you've got a Judaism deal, you've got all of these different deals. And he goes, hey, man, I don't want to take any chances. Right. You got to respect that. He was like, I'm crossing the bingo card on this one. Let's make sure that I don't offend anybody when I get up there.
Right. Right. And I
But are
think,
we going to leave behind a lot of people now that are going to stay here because they had no beliefs going in, and now the realization that life does continue is going to be shocking to them?
yeah, I mean, being a medium, I speak to everybody on all different, ages, races. The soul has no gender, right? So when I talk to people that are atheists on the other side, they do have a deep realization that life continues. But because we have free will, it's up to them if they want to go into that light. And they'll have
Mhm,
many opportunities. I have been speaking to spirits my whole life, and what they say is they kind of have to go through that life review and that school, and they're able to grow. A lot of people are able to heal differently on the
mhm,
other side. And I do believe in reincarnation. I've just seen too much proof of it.
mhm.
So I think that whatever you want to call it, God, source, love, higher power, whatever you want to call it, it's really living within inside of us.
Okay.
So if you want to connect to that, great. If you want to not connect to that, which is yourself, fine. But there's no real wrong or right way. It's like
Okay.
it's inevitable. We're all going to pass, but because of free will, it's free will. So you want to stay, you can stay. You want to go, you can go.
All right. Now, do you believe that it's these spirits that stay out of fear that are vibrating in a, again, let's get all woo woo and esoteric on oh, they stay out of fear, so they're vibrating at a lower frequency. Does that make them more easily controlled by spirits or elements, energies, whatever you want to call the demonic realm, to control and lord over, because
Right.
they're in that kind of same magnetic frequency holding these energies?
Yeah, well, I've seen attachments on people, and I'm sure you've felt attachments in places and things, and you're very versed in all that.
What are you
So,
saying, Amy? Is there something here with me right now?
no, I just know you've been in
Okay.
a lot of
All
places
right.
that have a
Yes.
lot of history, I'll say. So, when you cross over, it doesn't mean that you still can't have attachments, because those
Mhm.
attachments gain power from you getting off your path. So it's
Okay.
all an energy exchange, right?
Mhm.
So what really happens is that if you're a really sad and depressed person and you decide to take your own life, no one's going to judge you, but you may have to see how it affected everybody around you, because that's part of consciousness. And you actually start to ascend to different levels of consciousness through love and forgiveness for yourself and through others. Because by nature, we are compassionate people. We don't start out evil, right? We don't start out thinking, I'm going to end my life, this
Right.
way.
Not that way,
So
right.
yeah, circumstances are crucial. And people always ask me, what's the purpose of life? That's a number one question I get as a medium. And my honest response is, you come into this life to experience love and duality. And hopefully the way that you end is the way that you begin, with love and compassion, and just get clean, just get real. So tell the people you love them, and don't hold back, and be free and enjoy this world. We're meant to enjoy it.
Well, let's get into some of the dark elements of this. Are these things that we call demons, are they something truly just purely evil in nature, or are they souls that have been tortured and tortured themselves so long that they've lost their humanity and their spark?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I believe that we unknowingly call this energy to us. And
Okay.
that's really hard for the ego to understand. Why would I call, a demonic energy? So a lot of
Right.
people right now are waking up, the spiritual awakening, the age of Aquarius, that's
Hmm.
real woo-woo, but it's true. This is where we're at. So people are meditating, right?
Hmm.
And they're opening all these doors and opening all these channels, but they're not grounding and protecting themselves. And they're literally on a mountaintop screaming out, "Hey guys, I'm here." you know?
Right.
So everything is going to come. You've got the angels, the elementals, the demonics, you've got all these different layers, all these different energies, and even, off-planet beings. It's all interdimensional, because we are interdimensional beings. So what happens is some of these energies will show up, and they will puppet you and meddle you, and they will come into your existence and really try to get you away from progressing. Like, have you ever seen somebody who's like really drunk and they're not even coherent?
Hmm.
I've seen it
Have
a
you
lot.
watched have you watched my show on Friday nights?
I have.
Yeah.
It's kind
So
of why I'm
yes,
bringing it up.
3 of them every Friday night. But
hmm
no, I get your point, and
Yeah.
it's interesting because there is, you say a level like that. I had an experience in college. I had a very bad, issue take place. I drank myself stupid that night, and I
hmm
kept waking up fully conscious in places, doing things with this kind of quantum leap feel of who the hell's driving the ship, because I don't remember putting myself out here and all of a sudden, boom, it'd go black, and then I'd be out walking on the street with somebody talking, and I'm
Right.
having a full-blown conversation, no clue what I'm saying, what we were talking. It was like this weird time jump, but consciousness, I was well aware that this was very weird. So it
Right.
made me wonder, who did I open up to? Who was there that saw the open vessel and was able to creep in and do what they wanted to?
Yeah. And I bartended for 15 years as a medium and didn't tell anyone I was a medium.
Oh, geez.
So I constantly, and I'm from Portland, Oregon, and that place is just super haunted anyway. I
Mhm.
worked at a bar that was actually from 1934. It has a lot of history. And I would watch people in front of me, regardless if they were 21 or 90 years old. And this is the real influencers, not Instagram influencers. These are the spiritual influences that come in. And when your this isn't fully there, they like to step into your auric field. And alcoholics love to be around alcoholics because they want to live through you. And so I've seen it over and over and over again. And it's not a full-blown possession, as I've have seen those, but it's more of like a suggestion. Like all of a sudden my regular would say, "Oh, I really want to drink whiskey tonight." And I'm like, "Bob, you drink beer. What's going on with you?" And I'd see somebody behind him in spirit with a glass of whiskey being like, "Yeah, I win." you know?
That makes my skin crawl being
Mm.
in working as a bouncer for years, being involved in this, and then in the spiritual realm, there's been all these haunted bars I've gone into, and I've had on occasion a few of the bartenders that'll be like, "Come here, okay, it's
Mhm.
8 o'clock. You see Jim at the end of the bar. Look at him. Look at
Yeah.
him good. And then in a couple hours, I want you to come back, and I'm going to point him out to you again."
Mhm.
And you would swear you're looking at a different person. And he
Yeah.
goes, "Oh yeah, about 20 minutes ago, he stopped drinking his normal drink, and now he's only drinking gin, which he
Yeah.
never drinks until this point when he starts looking like that guy." And
Mhm.
it wasn't like a, Incredible Hulk, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing where it was such a radical change, but you would see the face would, I don't, the person changed. There was
Yeah.
somebody else there, and it was
Yeah.
undeniable.
Yeah, and it was actually so different, being an empath and being a medium, because I would see people's family members around them trying to protect them from these energies.
Mhm.
And so it's not like be paranoid, but be cautious, be vigil. Before you go out and drink, set an intention and surround yourself in white light, or call in whatever power you believe in, just so you're able to have an enjoyable night. It's important.
Right. Well, and you get in there and you start, many of us have had those moments where you start having dark thoughts and you're very aware, this is
Mhm.
not me.
Right.
This isn't me. This isn't my interior dialogue, right? I
Mhm.
joke around, and I always have with my wife and kids. I will say something funny and stop and kind of look like I'm breaking the fourth wall on a TV, because in my head I'm hearing the audience applaud and laugh and cheer, and then I go back to my normal thing. But there are times I will hear and I'm like, "Oh, that's not me." And then I have to be real cautious of, where was I recently? What was I doing?
Right.
Do some really good grounding prayers to try to clear myself of that energy. But it's important, wouldn't you say, then be cognizant of that. When you start to feel a change affecting you, do what
Mhm.
it takes, whether it's taking a hot shower or a bath in Epsom salts or
Absolutely.
rolling around in the snow, whatever your cleansing ritual is, right?
Mm,
You should
yeah,
invoke it.
absolutely. And I have people come in, as a medium, and I open a door, and I work with Angel Michael primarily, but
Mhm.
I'll be like, "Oh, this is really strange. Were you at Costco today?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, you brought someone with you from Costco." And they're like, "Why?" I'm like, "I don't know. They like your light. They like your energy. They like your vibe."
How depressing ghosts are hanging out at Costco, right? It's like in the afterworld,
Well,
I'm going over to Costco for a while.
they're everywhere. They're in,
Yeah.
the gym. They're everywhere we are, because they need our energy to manifest, to live, and it's not like they're all out to do you some harm. Sometimes there are helpful spirits. I'll be
Mhm.
honest with you. But the thing I really want to educate people about, and I'm so thankful that you are having me here, is about the spirits, but then the other elemental, the other realm, the darkness, or what people call demons, because I was tortured by that my whole life growing up, like my entire
That's and
childhood.
that's what I wanna talk to you about. Let me have you answer this one question, because this seems
Mhm.
like a good segue into it.
For sure.
From our listener, where is all the negativity in our country, and I think we can say in our world, coming from? She says, "I believe we're a possessed world by demons." What do you make of that? Have we hurt ourselves and scarred ourselves and become so self-absorbed that we have allowed darkness to start to take a deeper hold than it ever has before?
Well, I do believe that there is a spiritual warfare at all times,
Mhm.
and all sides are present at all times. But when
Right.
we as a collective consciousness decide to focus on the negative, we create our reality. And therefore, the darker matter is more prevalent in our everyday. Because when you turn on that TV and you're seeing the fear and the fear and the fear, and we're getting things, our rights taken away, and they put people away for a few years, and they made people sit with themselves. People weren't ready to do that, and
No.
so a lot of people went through divorce, psychosis, depression. So it really kind of amplified things, and the hauntings got heightened. And I mean, I got to be honest, like my business really boomed, because everyone's like, "What am I feeling? What am I sensing?" Right? And I do believe that it's important to focus on the good, even if it's one good thing a day. Like
Right.
just just highlight that. It's
Get
so
out your
easy to look
journal.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do those gratitude journals. Remind yourself, because sometimes we do get in that muck and mire, like the never ending story, right? With poor Atreyu getting trapped in that muck, and you've got to remember that there's a lot of good,
You're
and
so
focus to
funny.
let that start to lift you back up. Well, I
Look at
just
this
watched.
tattoo. It's the never
What have
ending
you?
story.
Oh, nice. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Despair, right? Locked in
Mm.
that despair. Well, I just watched this deal, and for fans and people out there suffering from anxiety, I will try to find the link and share it, or maybe even air it on Friday's show, because I think it's important. This woman explains one way to beat anxiety, and it's in the focal points of a lot of times you focus downward. She said it's by tilting the chin up and lifting the eyes. When your eyes are pointed upward, you don't go into a place of panic. And it's just
Right.
really weird, but it has been bringing me out of anxiety moments. So it is interesting in the way that we shape our perception and the way we do things. And you start looking down, and it does suck you right into a wormhole of despair.
Right.
It's in raising yourself. And as woo woo and tree huggery as that sounds, prove me wrong. That's what I keep telling people. Do it, and then tell me it didn't work before you tell me that's stupid. Okay.
Oh,
do
you're
it.
speaking my language right here.
Yeah, I love this stuff. Well, now, because I talked about the fact that you had these issues, and at the end of this, I've seen a bunch of the people ask, well, what can we do to clear ourselves? Talk to us about what you've had happen in your life, the specifics of it, and then we'll end this with that. And then
Yeah.
obviously, Amy, people are already going, when is she going to be back?
Oh.
So we'll have you back on a regular basis to help, maybe, because I do think we need more.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love
We
to.
need, this is the stuff they don't teach you in school, how to take care of
Absolutely.
other aspects of life. So
Yeah.
your life starts very young with darkness and negativity
Yeah.
impacting you.
Yeah,
Please.
it was wild. So my whole family is has these abilities, and I grew up in a very rural part of Oregon, and Oregon is a little bit of a depressing place. It has a lot of rain and history. It's also a very beautiful place. But as I was growing up as a young child, about 4 or 5 years old, I became very connected to the spirit world, and I thought everyone could connect in this way. But whenever I would speak to these spirits that would come and visit me and kind of look after me, like play with me a little bit, and became my friends, or imaginary friends, as we say, I would notice a darker demonic energy step in, and all of my friends would get scared and leave. And throughout growing up in that house, I felt it constantly, constantly. And it was always looming behind me, trying to tell me to do things that were not of my own thoughts, and always trying to keep me and my family members in a depressed state. And, growing up, I kept it to myself, and I wasn't comfortable sharing it with a lot of people, as most mediums are. Nobody tells you you're a medium when you're growing up. They're just like, hey, be quiet. That's not for everyone. So there was this crazy giant snowstorm that happened when I was 15 years old. And I went outside, and I was, smoking a cigarette, being a bad kid. And I was with my boyfriend at the time. And I just remember feeling that presence again, that dark, dark presence. And when I see this presence, it's this giant, as a tree, okay? And it's this dark velvet shadow. And if any of you guys have ever seen The Dark Crystal from Jim Henson's magical movie, it's almost like a Skeksis, or like a bird type energy with these red eyes, and very shadowy. I turned and looked at it, and my boyfriend looked at it, and we both saw it. And that's when I realized this was very real, not just in my thoughts. You know what I mean?
How impactful is that to you as somebody who is gifted, like working with Cindy Kaza for 4 years on the different TV shows?
Right.
What Shane and I would be like, we would play back an EVP, and it would be a clear response, and she would freak out. And we're like, you're a medium. You hear this all the time. She goes, yeah, but nobody hears it with me.
Right.
You're hearing what I'm hearing. And that's what shook her, because it's this kind of great, Yes, it's
Yeah.
there. You're seeing it. You're hearing it. What kind of revelation was that? That it wasn't just something only Amy was experiencing.
It was validating, but it shook me to my core, I'm not gonna lie. Because, when you're experiencing it on your own, it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But yeah, I went and asked my mother, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I've seen that," which even freaked me out even more. Um, so, needless to say, I didn't visit my mom's house for quite a while after that. And
Understandable, sure.
yeah, until about
But
3
but
years ago.
can depression, there's a few iterations of this question, but can depression and anxiety, do you think, take on a form outside of us? We don't
Yes.
know where consciousness lies, so could the Skeksis-like creature be a projection of what our depression is? Not
Yeah.
something that's necessarily exterior influencing us, but an outward projection of the negativity of the thing that is us.
Oh, yeah, I honestly think that, we manifest a lot of the darkness that comes to us, and
Mhm.
it takes shape in whatever form it believes that will scare you the most.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know that's kind of a mind warp, but I really do think that because living with anxiety, which how can I not? Because it's almost
Right.
like I'm always searching for the next thing to keep myself safe from, right?
Right.
So it's a hypersensitivity, but I'm not only feeling this reality, but I'm feeling the other side, the other dimensions, the other realms. And so I really had to learn how to ground and shield and protect myself. That was very crucial in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something a lot of people, I think, even if you're not trying to practice spirituality, mediumship, I think learning to ground yourself, you don't
Mhm.
have, it's like, right? You don't have to believe in Bigfoot. He believes in himself enough to exist, right? It's like you don't have to believe that you're a medium or have psychic abilities, but it still might be a really great idea to learn how to ground yourself. Even psychologically, it gives you a different demeanor and a different control within yourself. So by
Absolutely.
learning to ground and shield and protect, that's just it's a protective measure that doesn't have to be um, something negative,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah,
I think a
yeah.
lot of people are like, "But I don't wanna shield myself, then I won't find love, and I won't find happiness because I've got this barbed." Well, there's a difference between a healthy grounding and boundary setting
Mhm.
for you, others in the spirit realm.
Right, and even people, in our dimension, I would say half the time spirits are pretty chill. They have a lot of lessons and they have a lot of things they wanna talk about,
Right.
but there's other ones that can manip people in the flesh. So be not paranoid, just be cautious, and when you step out that door, just anchor yourself in and say, I am protected, I am love, all those things, the I ams are really important because they're reassuring your subconscious and conscious mind that you are safe.
Alright.
It's important.
You have these experiences, you don't wanna go to the mom again. Do you think that this is a projection from within mom that she keeps there at the house? Do you think that this is an outside influence that's, mingling with your mom's anxiety and depression in her own life? This is just the projection of what you're seeing?
I believe that with people who have in hated inabilities, right? Everyone's psychic. I just want to remind everyone that everyone has this, it's inner knowing, intuition, but there are some of us who have been able to tap into it deeper
Mhm.
because we didn't have rules or restrictions and no one crushed our imagination, and our imagination is the greatest gift we have. But I do believe that when you're a super bright light, that the darkness is like, oh, hell no, I'm coming for you because you can help other people and you can help people cross over. And I can't have that. I need them
Mm.
because I got to be real with you. You're the prize in this spiritual realm. Your consciousness keeping you on a karmic wheel. That's their sole purpose. These energies want to keep you stuck. They do.
And then you're somebody with your abilities, you're facing these and seeing these things, and it's a reality. It's not just an esoteric concept, it's a physical manifestation of these broken energies. Ho
Absolutely.
and it had to be absolute torture for
Mm.
you.
Yeah, it was. And, It was every day, every night. I mean, I've gotten grabbed out of bed. Even 3 years ago, I was like, oh, I've cleared all these houses and I can totally handle myself. And I go back to my mom's, and it took me right back to being a child. And I spent like 5 nights there. And on the third night, that approached me, and it was just like, it wants to fight you, but you have to realize that you're not supposed to fight it, because ultimately love wins. So when you send it compassion, you render that powerless. And I ran away from it for so many years, and I realized it's not even for me to fix.
Okay, you gave a perfect example that I want to reiterate back for people in maybe a less metaphysical way.
Mhm.
Um, I People will say, Dave, boy, you have the patience of a saint with people online. They take pot shots at you. Once in a while, I get bitchy back, and I can be a dick like anybody. But a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll throw prayers at them or
Mhm.
tell them, I'm sorry you feel that way, and you have to understand it was never my intention to make you feel that way. So I hope you'll accept my apology. And
Right.
and it's amazing how many times that stops people in their tracks of anger. And then I'll get messages, and they're like, I don't know why I reacted that way. I lashed out, and I'm sorry. I mean, um, boy, that you even took the time to respond is crazy. Thank
Right.
you for hearing me. And I'm like, well, everybody deserves to be heard. And I try to show that courtesy. And I'll ask my listeners sometimes when I get these hatred things, I'll post them not in a way to dox them, but in a way that I say, let's focus on positivities. There's obviously something on this person
Right.
that needs to be pushed off, and they're not able to do it on their own.
Exactly.
I love that you're saying that, because that is a manifestation way that when you feed that spoonful of sugar back, when they're, "Rah, rah, rah." Oh, what the hell was that all? You're being nice to me. Sometimes that pattern interrupt is all it takes.
Right. And the more what we call shadow work in the spiritual world that we do,
Mhm,
and really confront our inner demons, because we all have that inner, if we didn't, we wouldn't be here. That's why we're here,
mhm,
is to confront our dark side and the light side, and live in this world. But a lot of it, I really think, comes from, yeah, anxiety, depression. I mean, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people get lost to drugs, and that's a huge gateway for these energies to come in, or alcohol.
mhm.
And it's just about realizing that it isn't your job to judge people, and you can always, like, send people positivity and love. And I've stood in front of, this giant demon, and just put my arms out and said, I love you. And it literally melted away. Literally. Like
Oh,
like
well, thanks, Amy. I'm
it,
sorry.
right, it forgot what love was, because we all come from love. We've just gotten distorted along the way, or the path's not straight, and that goes for these angels and demons as well. They ultimately kind of choose what they want to do, whether it's the good or the bad. It's the all, and we have to respect that.
Now everybody has a different element of what is scary, what is demonic to them. When you say that you've seen and felt these things around you,
Right.
tell me, and you were telling me some pretty scary stuff when we had a chance to talk at the Fear Fair, which is a great
Mhm.
place, I guess, to have these conversations. But so that people understand what were your experiences?
Well, I'll try to sum it up, because I have a lifetime experiences, but
Right.
I'll be in my kitchen. It's usually when I'm doing something mundane, like driving or doing dishes, and I'll feel like something lick my neck. I'm just going to be real. Most of the time, it's sexual in nature. These things are really preying on people's, hurts and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I'll just turn around, and I'm just like, what the heck are you doing in my house? You do not belong here. You need to leave. So it's all about boundary setting.
Yeah,
It's
but you hugged that other demon, Amy. What's going on?
yeah, but you're a bouncer, you
No.
get it.
Oh yeah.
You have to have like a firm foundation, and be like, "Hey, with love, you're cut off. You're done. You gotta go.
Yeah.
You gotta go." So that's kind of what it's about. But I mean, when I try to explain this to people who maybe don't have the knowledge or the know-how behind it, how many times, and I feel like we've all done this, we're in the car, and there's someone in front of us, and something is telling us to just slam into them. You're just like, hey, I'm going to hit that guy, or I'm going to push that guy off the road. And I'm sorry, I live in LA, so I actually see people do this all the time. And I can't help to think, wow, that's really out of character. And that's really dangerous. And that could take someone's life. So when you're in that theta beta wave, or when you're like really not thinking, that's when these things try to influence you. So when that happens, just say, be gone. Those are not my thoughts. That is not how I act. And I don't want any part of this. Have a nice day.
I do that. I'll say the Lord's Prayer in my world when I've had those moments. And again, that's being cognizant of, I know the voices in my head. And again, this makes me sound completely insane, but I know the voices in my head that are like, no, don't ask her out. No, you're not. She's going to shoot you down. That's that niggling little voice in the back of your brain that just wants to keep you in place, right? And it's the ego check. I know that voice well. We have conversations all the time, but then when you hear the darker side, you feel the impression of something else trying to influence you into something. There are times that I just stop and I'm like, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And I focus on whatever it is, literally pushing back through the back of my head and my neck, like, get out of here, right? And just do the prayer and do that same thing. You're not welcome here. This isn't, you don't do this and you don't affect my children, or I will call forth the heavens, man. Back off, right? That is important. So I can corroborate for you on that as well, not being a medium or a psychic, or at least not one that knows what he's doing.
It sounds like you do.
And people are going to start wanting readings and
okay, no.
Right.
But I will say that really evil demonic energy at the house that I grew up in, we did as a family come together and we did cast it out, and we did call on, the source, the energy, the all, and we called on the angels, and they came and took it away. And I heard it because I'm very clairaudient. I hear quite frequently. And, it is weird when you hear your name and stuff like that. It is strange, even though you hear it your whole life, because it's like, you look around like, well, who said that? Because you're still a human, right? It's important that even though, maybe you're having some supernatural experiences, that you still keep one foot on the ground here. It is important because, you don't want to get lost in La La Land. Like, we're here to experience this world as well. So,
boy, that's a tough lesson, because as somebody who's intrigued in this, there are times I have to stop myself and go, dude, time to stop chasing death. Go hug your wife, go play with your kids, because man, you're forgetting about what you're here to do, which is live this life. It's fascinating to try to understand these things, and I love sharing it, but let's keep it in these boundaries of Monday and Friday for 60 to 90 minutes, right? Let's not make this, and obviously I do more because I'm constantly working in the field, but it's, you have to remember the importance of living.
Yes.
And not give all the focus to death and what comes next, and trying to make that communication.
Yeah, life is for the living. And I'll go and do a reading, and I get like, I think because all of the stuff that I've been through, I don't get like, hey, I want to talk to grandma. I get like, hey, my brother was murdered, or hey, my friend is missing, and really violent, stuff here in LA and all over the world, really. And then I have to come home and watch like Step Brothers or something, because I have to kind of get out of this, because that's the balance. That's the balance.
Right.
And release the why. Just know that you're never going to understand all of it. And even I tell people, I know nothing. I just know from my own experience. These are my things that I can share with you, and hopefully they help. But formulate your own opinions, like, you're never going to know it all. You're never going to figure it out.
Aaron Higgins says, how can we get more info on Amy? Well, please insert $3.99 for the next minute. No, on our website, we've got a link for Amy. You can find to follow her, go to her website, get readings. She is great. You guys are going to absolutely love her. I fell in love with her at the event. She was the energy is just so amazing that she brought to it. Her spouse, I don't know what the proper term
my
is. Fiance with her, they had just such great energy at this conference, and they're friends of Jimmy Church and friends of mine. So I like when you can meet the people you see that rise, that light up. Like, the color behind you is a definite If you meet her in person, this is the colors you're going to see around this woman
Yeah.
for these moments. That's why I wanted you to come on and share, and I hope people are seeing that as well. There are questions. Let me try to get to a couple here. Mario says, Amy, do you use any words on your property or placing iron rods on the four corners of your property as a barrier? And I want to bring that up, but I'm curious. People use sage, they use feathers, they use sea salt, they use this, that. Does it matter what it is? It's the intention behind what you're doing is as much as putting the rods in is more of a ritualistic system. It doesn't have to be iron rods.
No,
It
it
can be
doesn't.
whatever you feel. Your what you're doing is you're showing boundaries to the spirit realm. This,
Yeah.
this, and this. In here, mine. Out
Right.
there, stay. Right? That's what it really kind of boils down to. And if you don't
Absolutely.
believe in the things you're doing, right?
What's
Like
the
the
point?
vampire says, you have to believe in that for it to work on me, right? As he grabs the crucifix and bends it in his hand. There is an element of that, but it's interesting how people that have demonic encounters, cryptid encounters, alien encounters, and then say, in the name of Jesus Christ, be gone. These beings respond.
They do, yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, that's because we're all demons, Dave. Or do they have a respect that you've set a boundary?
Hmm.
I'm going to back up. I'm out of here.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I like for my property or my home or my
Mhm.
office or wherever I am, even my car, I always say, I trust the process, right? I trust my intuition. I trust my inner knowing. I trust that I'm safe. But I also, if I'm having a night where it's kind of loud in my room because I'm a medium and things like to show up,
Mhm.
I call in angels to protect the four corners of my home, my property, and everything around me. And I let them take care of it because that's their world. This is ours. We're not supposed to even know about a lot of this stuff, but some of us know more than others. And that's why, you meet these people that understand. But know that it's not your battle to fight. So why are you scared and why are you trying to protect yourself from something that has no power over you? And know
Set the
you're safe.
boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. Say that. That's why I tell people, well, Dave, aren't you afraid to go in? No.
No.
I'm going. Am I afraid of ghosts? I went into the haunted place looking for a ghost. Are you afraid of gorillas when you go to the zoo? You have a healthy respect and fear of them because you're not going to climb in their enclosure, but you don't get freaked out when you walk in a zoo and go, "What the hell is a lion doing here?" Well, a tiger, right? You're at the zoo. What did you expect to see? I'm in a haunted location trying to engage the spirits. No, I'm not fearful. Doesn't mean
Right.
I don't get shocked. It doesn't mean I don't get when you're standing there talking to Shane on the right of it and you turn around, there's somebody on the left that doesn't belong there. It's shocking. But I
Yeah.
try not to live in that place of fear. And I try to tell people that. And I love that you just said that because it's not yours. Put the battle up, call forth your angels, the power of the crystals around your neck or around your wrist, call
Right.
forth, the ghost of Elvis Presley. If he makes you feel secure and safe, your grandparents, people are always calling upon their relatives and ancestors. And
Yeah.
that's what the Native Americans and indigenous tribes and Egyptians and Mayan and Aztec cultures were all about the ancestors and calling forth
Absolutely.
not necessarily the dead, but the energy of what that meant to protect you. It's a
Yeah.
boundary.
It is. And you wouldn't let a stranger walk in your house. So
Nope.
it's just saying like, hey, I acknowledge you, I honor you, but you ain't allowed here. So have a nice day. And they'll go away. They have to respect it because this is our world. So
TR says, Amy, do you have any books that you've written?
I'm actually currently working on one, and it's about spirits that I've interviewed about how they would change their lives or live in more, how would they end their own suffering, essentially. So it's going to be pretty
We're
good.
definitely going to have you back. Yeah, I would love to hear that because boy, those are the life lessons we need to know. How do
Mhm.
we, because if we could teach ourselves not how to walk in a place of ignorance, but in a place of bliss, walk in a place of living a life that's worth living instead of living in a place that's filled with fear and anger and
Right.
retribution instead of empathy and love and compassion, man, what a world we could be in. What a world.
Yeah. Yeah. Break the
Right?
chains that hold you down.
That's right.
I've seen it so many times, the forgiveness in a session between a spirit and their loved one, and you can feel them just take a breath, and it's like they just lift higher every time you forgive and you love, and it's beautiful. I'll never stop doing sessions. I love it.
Lady If says, we natives still believe in our ancestors. We're still
Absolutely.
here. That's beautiful. And I what I love about this, Amy, and the reason I wanted you to be here, I've been very open with my own struggles with anxiety and depression through my life. The fact that I tried to attempt suicide when I was a teenager, and that something brought me back from that brink because I was open to it. I love the fact that for all intents and purposes, you could be methed out crack addict because of all the stuff you've lived through.
Yeah.
That's not the option you chose.
Yeah.
You chose to elevate, get over, realize, respect, and understand what happened to you, but know that that's not what defines who you are, and that you
Yeah.
get to write that book, not somebody else.
Right. And I think the strongest warriors have the deepest wounds.
Agreed.
Because when you go through so much trauma in your life and you can't even protect yourself from the unseen, right? You have no place to go other than the ground, but then you have to look up and decide that you choose to step out of that darkness. It's not about fighting it. It's just about living your truth.
Right. Hey, folks, real quickly in the chat rooms, Mark G., who usually is one of our moderators in the room, has been absent due to health issues. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers, again, sending out positivity. If he's popped in and I missed it tonight, welcome back, Mark. If you're not and you're just listening with you and your wife, thank you both for continuing to tune in, and take care of yourself, man. That's number one. As we leave here, and we're definitely going to have you back, Amy. It might even be something where we're going to need to talk to you once a month, looking at some of these different elements, and we'll gather up good questions people can throw to you. But what can people do right now that believe there's an attachment? What can they do from not Dave Schrader, who's just the TV guy, but from somebody who walks the walk, talks the talk? How do they break those attachments?
Oh, man. The first thing, don't give your power away. Don't think you have to go give all of your money to some sort of Reiki practitioner or, healer. Know that it lies within yourself, and know that you are divinely protected and that nothing can hurt you, and surround yourself in white light and just get good. Put your feet in the ground. Just know that you're there and believe it. Trust is the key. Trust it.
And hey, you guys know I believe in practitioners of energy work and healing. Like Amy said, though, you can't become addicted to that.
Absolutely.
You may use that as a doorway in, start getting help shoring up, right? It's like when we see the floodwaters rising, we need to start bagging those sandbags together to hold back the water. So get those practitioners to give you the skills so that you can do this for yourself. You shouldn't be holden unto them or the practices. You should be learning what you need to do to walk through these moments.
Yeah, you are the light. And if you need assistance, ask, but know that you're also protected. And when you start to feel those negative thoughts, just like we talked about, be gone. That's not me.
Exactly. Christina says, yes, never give your power away. We all do. We're human. We break. And as I love to say, and I say all the time, it's okay to fall. That doesn't make you weak. What makes you weak is if you continue to lay there. What shows where the real fortitude is when you reach up for somebody else's hand to get the help back up. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength, because you know your limitations. You get the help. And once you're back up there, make sure that while you're doing what you do, you keep that hand back there to help the next person up as well. And
Absolutely.
that chain will make a difference.
Absolutely, it does.
For the spirit realm, for the spirits that are around us right now listening to you, what can we tell those spirits so that they can let go?
It's like live and let love. Just go. There's nothing to be afraid of. All you're going to face is everything you've ever needed.
Norton, right?
Everything you've ever needed is there. Everything you've ever loved is there. I've seen it. Go to it. And it's beautiful.
Very cool. Amy, thank you so much for brightening up the show.
Thank you.
Your friendship, which I look forward to having a long, fruitful friendship with. And I know your fiance's got some music. Hopefully we're going to be able to share on the show and a pair share soon.
Yeah.
And keep up with that as well. But please, I would love to have you back at a more regular basis, to maybe even do a special show once a month on Wednesdays, Ask Amy nights, where we can have you come back on and share with people.
I would love
if you're
that.
open to do something like that.
For sure.
Stay with me after we wrap up here. I want to talk to you for a few seconds off air, but I want to thank all of our listeners, all of the viewers that join us and share this with us. I hope that, again, I hope that the darkness out there is just a little bit more light with the information that we share on the show, that you can take away from this new ways to gain your life back, because that's what it is about, living the life. And in grieving those that we lose, that's a natural human part. Know that you're not grieving for them in the sense of their loss. You're grieving for what you've lost. But the best way to honor the people that we love in our lives and those spirits that surround us is by living a life worth living, giving back. When I find myself dwelling in a place of darkness and loss over my mother and my grandfather and friends, I do something that would make them happy that I was alive. I see something new. I pay attention to something. I call a friend. I do something to make that count. And I hope that that's what you can do in your lives as well. Thank you, my little darklings all around the world, for sharing the light with me here and sharing it across the world with other people that tune in and become a part of our family right here on the Paranormal 60.